Dana, thank you for that. For being really clear about the difference between transforming and transformative. Because, sometimes language is both supportive and a hindrance, You can change things around, but you don't actually have real second order change.
Right. Somebody mentioned the Titanic, and I'm thinking of rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have a different vantage point for the unfolding disaster that's about to occur.
Yeah.
But for it to be transformative, something deeper has to happen.
Right.
And that's where I think the epistemic insight comes into all this.
The other thing that struck me when we were doing that was I was so tempted to sing Red and Yellow and Green and Blue. Do you remember that song? But in a way, it's that notion that you as each child exploring this bag experiences that prism, they end up being prompted to ask other questions, to respond in a different way. And each response, if shared, if there's an atmosphere which allows them to share that in a very open way, will enrich the understanding of others, just as you described. So I think that's really helpful.
And you wonder how a scientist might respond to these questions. Most of us responding sort of like scientists. But you wonder how an artist might respond to those same questions.
Yeah.
Or what about if Shakespeare, before he went to the Globe Theatre, put one of these on and looked outside, would his poetry be different? Would he see something different? He talks about star-crossed lovers. I see a lot of star-crossing going on here.
Yeah.
So how would Shakespeare interpret that? So you have all these different kinds of perspectives that are historically from different periods of time and different fields of knowledge. So they can all work together.
So the discovery bags work as a way to engage students in the classroom to really begin to think about a phenomenon and to then explore it from multiple perspectives. And I mean, what I thought was really interesting was that as an adult, I was just as engaged as I hope a 6-year-old would be, but at a different level. Yeah. And that's really interesting to consider as well, that the kind of big questions that we might pose remain big questions for us right through our lifetimes. They are the things that inspire discovery, that fire creativity, So the question for us now, just in the latter part of this meeting, is looking at the bag, and there are a couple of other items in it. I'm just going to invite you, if you wouldn't mind, just to explore them. This is the bag that has been distributed to those schools here in England participating in the project. And they illustrate the kinds of resources that might be made available. If we want to extend this project, and we do, internationally, I'd like your comment on some of these resources and drawing on your own experiences, whether there are other kinds of resources or another approach that would be more culturally relevant in different contexts. So it's a very open question in many ways. And so what I would invite you to do, if you don't mind, is just to take a moment or two to have a look through the resources, to think about them, remembering that the purpose of these is to engage students, to fire their imagination, and to help them to come to an understanding of knowledge as something that we can acquire and approach from multiple disciplinary perspectives. Thank you all very much, because clearly you were very engaged there. And what I'm going to do now is maybe just invite if there are reactions or comments that you'd like to make around the potential that there is to take this project internationally and how we might do that, particularly drawing, I suppose, on the inspiration of our discovery bags. So, Martin, would you like to make a comment?
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Hagan. I'm Head of Education at St Mary's University College, Belfast, and my work centres around working with teachers, preparing teachers for primary education and post-primary education. What I've been doing has been this kind of thing, but with teachers. So trying to reimagine the whole idea of teacher professional learning and the competences that the teachers need for the 21st century. Because without the teachers, none of this can happen, I think. So there's that connection which has to be made, which is really important. I suppose my concern in relation to this is that particularly in the UK, particularly in England, the education system is very restrictive and very prescriptive. In Northern Ireland, we have a selective system of education, which, you know, is similar to Kent, where Michelle is, I think. And that's problematic, because when you try and tinker, in inverted commas, and do something different and exciting like this, people sometimes react in that very negative way and say, no, you can't do that. So I think there's a barrier, not necessarily a barrier that can't be overcome, but it's a barrier that we can't ignore. Because I firmly believe that the whole notion of connected learning and breaking down barriers between learning and focusing on the key life questions that we all face, and trying to get children at the earliest stage to engage with those and to think differently about what does school mean, what does learning mean. Gilda used the term there that, you know, maybe we need to forget about this word teaching and think about promoting learning and flip the thing round. So there's a whole kind of language issue around this. There are conceptual issues around this. I think those of us who know something about learning and who are involved in the promotion of learning know that this works. It makes people become critical thinkers, and it helps them to develop in terms of their knowledge and understanding and their overall life skill and competence. But I do put that proviso in that, you know, we personally, people who are involved in this, have those barriers to break down in terms of prescription and restriction. So that's something I think we need to think about.
Thank you very much for that. And I think a lot of heads were nodding around the table there, Martin, because there's so much comes down to, I suppose, curriculum policy. And so both here in the UK, if we were to attempt to engage in this project in Ireland or anywhere internationally, it's about recognising the curriculum policy limitations that there are there. But I also think it might be about how we present a project, so that it's not seen as an add-on, but actually as an enriching exercise, and the challenge for us maybe, as people who hope to be transformative educationalists, is to actually figure out how, working within those restrictions, we challenge them by demonstrating the value of what it is that we do. Nikki, would you like to say something from your experience, please?
So my name's Nicola Robinson, and I'm a Vice Principal at CATS Canterbury, which is an international school, obviously in Canterbury, I guess. And I've got about 50 different nationalities represented at the school, and most of them have EAL, so English as an additional language. And what struck me a little bit earlier, when I think Suzanne was mentioning about the kind of the wonder and awe that people have at any age with, say, a tool like this, it actually made me question that in a kind of an attitudinal sort of way, because what I was thinking from my perspective is that culturally a lot of students are inhibited and in terms of becoming engaged with these amazing, wonderful resources for fear of describing what they feel or what they think in case it's wrong, whatever wrong is. So that was something that I thought would be something that we should really look at. And also language as well, because being able to kind of communicate all this is absolutely essential. And if you want students to be able to have that level of communication and epistemic insight, then the language has to underpin that, really, to give them the confidence and the motivation to engage.
I think those are two really important points. I put them in a category that I'm calling limits but not barriers. So that idea of the cultural nuances that we need to recognise. And some of those inhibitions are so deeply ingrained in a culture that challenging them is unhelpful. And I've certainly learned that by experience working on an international project. So thank you for sharing that. And of course, language always matters, always does matter. And then Helen, maybe you might like to say something too.
So hello everybody, I'm Dr. Helen Burns. I'm a lecturer in education at Dundee University. My background is actually in creative and cultural education. I'm not a teacher, so I have a very kind of particular view, which I think accommodates this way of working quite well anyway, because I naturally work in an interdisciplinary way. And I understand the value of that. So working in Scotland, Scotland has a curriculum for excellence, which emphasises creativity. And I think actually that's a really good opportunity to bring this work to Scotland because it fits very well with that. We've had that for some time. I think some people would say that it's in need of refreshing and people are kind of looking for ways to enhance that as well. I think this could do that very well. I think in primary schools this might fit quite nicely because people are working in thematic and project-based ways quite often anyway. I think that could be quite welcomed. I think it would be really helpful in secondary contexts because I think everybody struggles to work in that more interdisciplinary way in secondary contexts. We've just been talking about metacognition. I think metacognition is something which is very much of interest within the Scottish education system. And any project that kind of touches on that, I mean, this is about meta-knowledge, but metacognition comes into this too, I think would be of great interest in Scotland as well. I think apart from all of the sort of transformative capacities which would be welcomed, the development of those would be very much welcomed. I think the other aspect of this that is appealing is the aspect which is about agency, which is about children's agency, but also about teacher agency. There's a lot of work going on in Scotland which looks at teacher agency at the moment, so I think that would be of great interest up in Scotland.
Thanks very much. Thank you for that, Helen. I'm going to hand over to Dana now, who has one further experiment for us all to engage in.
So just
to finish up.
Just very briefly, in your bag, you probably noticed that you have a lid here and some coins and an eyedropper. And we want just to explore a little bit. And you can make a prediction with your shoulder partner, if you'd like, to see first, how many drops of water do you think might fit on, pick maybe the smallest one of these. Make a little prediction, 2 drops, 3, 4, and then you can begin to count it out. And while you're doing that, I'm going to assume that since you're adults, you can multitask and listen to me at the same time. So first, why don't you try exploring that, and I'll say a few words about this. And if you spill any on the lid, that's okay, because you might find some interesting things about drops of water on this lid. So I'll let you begin doing that. Make a prediction first.
I'm predicting 5, but I need water. Oh no, I'll use water. You're right, let's just use drinking water. Fresh and then 5.
And these are rather big droplets, I admit.
Oh, individual?
Yeah, individual drops.
Individual drops. Individual drops. I've got 10.
You just did the whole thing at once.
Oh no, that was 7.
Yeah, but they're not, they have to be separate.
Oh.
Oh, they have to be separate. I've got 3. So this one I think is 7.
I think
And
it's cheat.
you can literally drop them on. You don't have to touch the coin either, as long as they hit the surface area somewhere. What was your prediction?
20.
20? Oh, okay.
I said 5, but I find. Ooh, I might get 5 on this one.
Oh my God. Let's try maybe that one. Oh, the whole
That's all right.
Now,
Now, even if they get clustered together, see what happens even when you get more on there than you think they should have. Are they staying as individual droplets, or are they becoming...
on the small one, just go together, but on the other one is still separate.
Right? Can you add more?
I don't know.
Yeah?
No, there's a point that you hit and they all join in.
Yeah, I think that's all.
And then it rolls off.
So when you got to the point of rolling off, you
Yeah.
probably saturated it,
Yeah.
probably held as much as it can.
Oops.
Saturation.
So what are you up to? How many drops?
I predicted 10 on the smallest.
10 on the smallest?
Got up to 20.
You got up to 20.
But then
If you have some that are spilled on the plastic, which is fine, if you have your drops in the plastic, can you push with your pen, for example,
Yeah.
the drops together, close together without touching? How close can you get two drops together without them touching?
All around, that's not.
I would suggest maybe using a pen because you have water on the edge of your dropper already. That might interfere. So if you use like an edge of your pen or something that's not wet,
No, go that way.
can you push them together so they're not touching but they're close?
I'll go about 2 millimeters.
What about 2 milli? What happens if you get too close? What happens? They make one big droplet too. So you use some good words before meniscus. We're going to use two other scientific words. One is cohesiveness. So water droplets like to hold hands with one another, right? And they're cohesive and they bond well together. That's why they're forming that dome, that type of meniscus that you described. But water also has a property of being attracted to other things too, and we call that adhesion. So it's sort of sticking to the penny or to the plastic. And there are all kinds of nice extensions that you can do with this very quickly. For example, if I had a little wooden sheet here and I can tilt it, I might make a run with aluminum foil here, and one with a little bit of sandpaper, one with a different type of medium too. You can have little water droplet races. And you can get two people to drop it at the same time and see which one runs down faster. Make your predictions first, of course. And then try to explain why different surfaces may make the behavior of the water droplet behave differently too. And that will unfold the concepts of cohesion and adhesion, friction, and lots of other things as well too. So very simple tools, and you can keep asking more questions that lead on to more investigations from this too. But it starts from something very basic, doesn't it? And then it begins to add on. And I think most people are surprised because the number of droplets when you're predicting is usually way under what you can actually put on there because of those nice scientific principles at work there.
Dana, thank you so much for that. One of the things that you shared with me was that the secret here, of course, is that the teacher doesn't tell the student what's going to happen, but actually asks questions which cause the child to constantly observe, report what they see, don't limit what it is that they can do. And that reminds me of a conversation that I had earlier with Mandy here, who's working in the same school as Michelle, and she spoke about the exciting things that were happening in her school since they became involved in this project. But the takeaway from our conversation for me was, I've learned not to underestimate what students can do. Don't underestimate, don't put a limit on what students can do. And of course, Amanda, that's exactly what you're doing now in your school. You've taken the limits and you've given them that notion of, dream and achieve, do it, and it'll get there.
There's a classical article by Eleanor Duckworth, which I'm sure Barry knows, in 1972 at Harvard Education Review. It's called The Having of Wonderful Ideas. And she explores the great ideas that children have that go beyond what the teachers expect them, and the teachers don't even realize some of the powerfulness of the ideas they come up with on their own. So they just have to be given the right opportunity to do this, and all kinds of magic takes place. But that's really important, right? Not to tell them what they should observe or should expect.
Absolutely. I'm going to wrap up our conversation now, and I'm going to tell you what the second question is. Guys, this is just self-promotion here. That the Global Forum on the Future of Education and Skills is engaged with. I told you that our first question was, what is it that young people will need to learn in order to be able to thrive? And the second question was, and how can we create the curriculum that enables that to happen? And we've seen examples of how we can create the curriculum that enables that to happen here. We're still answering that question, but we're very specifically moved into an area that was prompted by our stakeholders making comments such as the one that Helen made and that Martin made about the importance of teachers in all of this and the space that we create for teachers to enable them to be creative and imaginative learners themselves and to be open to engaging in, I suppose, a sort of a co-agentic relationship with their students and learners. So currently, we're almost finished our work. We hope to finish in 2024. And we're developing, we had set out to develop what we were calling our teaching compass to act as a complement for the learning compass. But actually we all got together, just over 380 of us in Jerusalem in June of this year, and we came away having decided you can't have two compasses. Teaching and learning are exactly the same thing. So we have to go back and have a look at how conceptualizing the teacher as a learner might impact the way we've designed our learning compass and, if you like, create the space for teachers within that compass. So that's the challenge. That's what we're working on at the moment, and we hope to have something to publish by February 24. So that's the work is being done by teachers, educators, NGOs, but most importantly by students. So we work slowly because everybody contributes. We engage the experts where we need their help, but we work on the premise that we're all experts because we're all learning and reflecting on our own experiences and sharing them is valuable. Anyway, that's the end of my advertisement for our project. Thank you all so much for this morning. It was really important, I think, for Barry and for the project that we were able to capture some of the ideas that we shared here this morning. So, and thank you for your patience through the recording process as well. And I'm looking forward to a great day now. It's going to be good fun. So thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you.